he already sent me a POAP. We don't have to do the call now. I got my POAP. I'm out.
Don't trust to try on an incognito window.
He's typing. Jumping in now. Okay. He's coming.
Somare's guides have 157 contributors. We have 149. He's beating us.
Not a race.
Not a race, but how could that happen?
Because he's promoting his and we're not.
Maybe.
I mean, if you go to CoinCasher, videos like he has this huge splash screen about. Hey everyone, I'm SuperFizz, and this is ETHStaker Community Call 14 on December 14th, 2020. I am here with the ETHStaker crew and Dave Rugendyke from Rocket Pool. Hey everybody. Yeah, so we'll get started today by doing some quick introductions, and then we'll talk about what this call looks like, and then we will hop right in. So I'm SuperFizz. I am an organizer for the ETHStaker community. You can find us at reddit.com/r/ETHStaker or on our Discord at invite.gg/ETHStaker. I also do what I like to call a kind of daily video that I call the State of the State. Michael is with us. Michael, you got anything you'd like to say?
No, I'm just happy to be here. and
That's good enough.
That's the spirit.
Nolan, who you know as Lamboshi. He says,
Hello,
hey.
everyone.
I
too am happy to be here.
Patricio Worthhalter is the brains behind the POAP. That's the Proof of Attendance Protocol. And everyone who attends this call through Zoom today will receive a link from Patricio Worthhalter. You can click on that link and use the screen that pops. That will be delivered to you on the XDAI network, but you can view it at app.poap.xyz or at poap.gallery. And you can transfer those POAPs from ETHSDAI to the main network for a fee if you choose to pay it. And our guest today is Dave Rugendyke. Hey, Dave.
Hey, everyone. How you going? Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This is the second one.
So, yeah, it's good. So, before we start, like, I have to get something. I assume, you know, other people know I talk about Rocket Pool a lot. Like, I'm a fan of the product, and I want to make it clear to everyone that I'm a fan of the product because of what they're doing, not because I'm shilling to pump my bags. And it's so important to make that distinction, because I realize that everyone in the cryptocurrency world is trying to make money, and I am with pure conscience talking about I love what you're doing. And really today I'd like to focus the call a little, I like to call pools like Rocket Pool, because we want to be technology focused, and so I hope we can work in that direction today, but it's not going to change my appreciation for the things you're creating.
Oh, many thanks, mate. Yeah, we appreciate it. We've been around for a long time, so yeah, hopefully a lot of people are aware of us by now. And we do appreciate, obviously, the feedback that we get from the ETHStaker community. Very much so. I mean, we get a lot of ETHStakers coming down Discord on a regular basis, and yeah, we hop into the Discord low, but yeah, we like to stick to our dungeon a little bit, and we do venture out to Reddit quite a bit as well. So if you ever have any questions about Rocket Pool, technical or otherwise, feel free to ping us in Discord or ping me on Reddit, and I'll jump in as quick as I can and answer away.
Great. If you'd like, I feel like most people are aware of the core product. And if they're not, there are a lot of resources, a lot of calls. I watched the call that you did with Chorus One that was posted about a week ago.
Yeah.
And I hope that we'll link that somewhere for people who haven't heard it. So I'm not really asking you to provide an in-depth review, but will you, for people who are new, kind of tell us where Rocket Pool is today?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we have a beta running on Piedmont, testing at the moment. So what we're basically building the ability to have trustless withdrawals. So this is something which is obviously very important for any kind of facility where you combine people's ether together to kind of form that 32F deposit. It's very important to have a trustless manner to do that. Currently, to date, there is no trustless way to do this. So any kind of staking service, bit pool, otherwise that are kind of operating, they will have custody to some degree, or they're implementing some kind of aggregate BLS signature, which still has its issues as well and still requires trust. So obviously for us, we're kind of aiming towards building a decentralized staking protocol for the Ethereum goal is to be built something community owned that the community will be able to run in the future in a trustless manner. So building a protocol is a lot different from building a service where you can essentially own parts of that service. You're seeking to kind of make some income and so forth, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, there's a lot of staking as a service providers currently throughout the world, and you'll get heaps of these on Ethereum to some degree. Actually, a lot of these guys can work within Rocket Pool if they want to, and but that's another topic entirely. But yeah, so basically what Rocket Pool is kind of doing at the moment is we are building out the ability for trustless withdrawals to happen once that's included in the Ethereum specifications, which is looking pretty good. Danny Ryan actually just put a pull request in for his contribution specifying a smart contract address on the Ethereum 1 network to receive a withdrawal from the beacon chains. So this is some kind of service, especially us. I mean, it won't just be used by us; it'll be used by other services. Hopefully, up trustlessness to staking Ethereum 2.0, which isn't really doable at this current point in time. So that's kind of where we're building out that direction at the moment. We're hoping for this to kind of be included in the spec around Q1. Now, it doesn't need to be built, into the clients or anything at this point. It doesn't need to wait till a hard fork occurs or anything like that. It just needs to be in the spec, and once it's in the spec, we can basically build to that spec. We're good to go.
Awesome, thank you. So for Rocket Pool, what I think I might have lagged out. I was under the impression that the big weight for Rocket Pool was that withdrawal to ETH1 addresses. Are there other things, as in audits or any other development that needs to be worked out before, or are you just sort of in a staging round?
No, we're kind of doing two things in parallel at the moment. So obviously we're keeping an eye on this withdrawal mechanism, because that's something we need to build once it's in the spec. The other thing we're building out is the tail end of our tokenomics at the moment, which is basically incentivizations for basically participating in Rocket Pool as a protocol, essentially. So that's something we're coming along really well. That's will most likely be in the next couple of weeks. And after that, we're basically going to start our Sigma Prime at the moment. So for those of you who aren't aware, Sigma Prime is actually the team behind the light through inside and out to a massive degree. And they are actually a security firm first and foremost before they actually start building this client. And they're still doing that, obviously. So obviously having someone that had the kind of intimate knowledge of ETH2, auditing your contracts as well as your node software is just about as good as it's going to get. So these guys, and then we're going to concentrate on getting audits from Consensus as well, probably shortly after that. So we want to do multiple rounds of audits, and this will obviously affect our timeline as well, because we can't launch until that's done and any issues are rectified early on. So so that's obviously will impact whenever we launch as well. So pretty well with our tokenomics stuff at the moment. It's I don't think there's any other kind of staking pooling service that will be kind of offering this kind of incentivization to stake in a community-owned protocol. So that's something that we're very conscious at the moment of, aiming to build it as best as we can before we launch. So that should be in the next couple of weeks, then audits, then hopefully mainnet. Exciting.
And I don't want to steal the conversation. I know that the other ETHStakers have questions, but I'd like to slip one more thing in. I gave the kind of warning yesterday that, I think it was yesterday, recently, I do these state of the stake videos, and I kind of got onto Rocket Pool, and my train of thought was, I was actually thinking about the Dow, 2017 Dow, how everyone piled in and everyone got, pummeled. When audits are complete, when Rocket Pool does go live, is it going to be a open the floodgates approach, or will it be a measured release?
No, it would be absolutely a measured release. So our smart contracts, anyone can kind of jump on GitHub and check this out right now. We've basically structured it so there'll be kind of a three. The first phase is Rock Pool, so ourselves basically in charge of any smart contract upgrades and basic settings. This will basically then transition into a period where it'll be Rock Pool and the DAO who have control over these settings. And then the third phase will always be us handing over full control to the DAO once everything's running operational. So that, a timeline for that kind of period will definitely be probably 6 months minimum.
Yeah.
I mean, we obviously need to make sure any kinks are ironed out early on. And full control will always be handed over to the DAO, potentially 6 to 9 months after a launch. Once things are working well and so forth, because we obviously need to make sure, that any kind of issues are ironed out early, and we definitely don't want to let the floodgates open like they did with DAO straight away. So measured release is definitely our aim at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. So I'll be quiet just a minute and give you guys a chance, because I know you've got your own questions. I don't want to hog it.
So is the DAO, what does the DAO control?
Okay, so there is a couple of settings in Rocket Pool which do need human influence. So a couple of these settings, which probably the first and foremost we get asked quite a bit, is basically the commission rate for node operators, minimum and maximum. So We have a formula that operates on a curve based on supply and demand for the rock pool network. So I'll just kind of explain how this works quickly. So let's say there's a lot of people depositing Ether that needs to get assigned to node operators, but there's not as many node operators coming to the table to meet that demand. Then we obviously have a bigger demand than supply kind of issue, and the commission rate for node operators can then obviously change to favor node operators to incentivize them to join the network to stake this ETH. So that's a very, very quick explanation of that. But so basically what we need there, we need certain minimum and maximum. So we need a minimum commission that the node operators can get paid, and we also need a maximum. So let's say a big whale comes to rock pool and deposits 10,000 Ether, and there's one tiny node operator ready. We can't have commission rates obviously spike up to, like 80, 90%, because then everyone would go, no node, all the node operators would join, but no one would stake with their Ether with Rocket Pool, because the rewards that would be getting generated to users who hold our RF token would be extremely diminished due to this high commission rate that's getting paid to node operators. So there needs to be a sensible maximum, which is based on current market dynamics, like competitors and so forth, and basically good commission, and also the price of Ether, because obviously if there's a huge commission rate, 10,000 US or something like that, that's a massive commission. So these kind of factors need to be weighed in to kind of have a human influence that can decide a sensible maximum and a sensible minimum that these node operators can get paid. So for our PMOD testnet that's kind of operating currently, we have a minimum of 2% commission rate for node operators and 20% as the maximum. So this is just something we've kind of tested out and kind of seen how it's operating the last few months that we've been running betas. Those minimum maximums have worked out quite well, but obviously you never know until you actually, that's monopoly money on PMOD. You never know until you actually have the real deal in place. That's probably two of the main things that the DAO would be in charge of. So there's inflation rate for RPL. So the RPL, obviously we're changing to an inflationary model for RPL. This will basically be given to node operators when they stake RPL on their node, as well as their own Ether. This RPL is used as collateral and be able to stake, the more inflation they earn as a reward for kind of providing this insurance to the network that if something goes wrong, the network won't lose any Ether, and basically anyone holding RF also won't lose any value either. So this kind of inflation rate is currently set at 5%. The DAO will be in charge of changing that in a future date. So obviously if RPL moons or something, they can reduce the inflation rate, or if they want to cut it out entirely, they can do that at a future date as well. It'll be up to the DAO. So that's just a couple of small examples of kind of some under the DAO's control.
I've got just a general question for you, David. One of the sort of perceptions of Rocket Pool is that it's kind of the gold standard, or is making its way to be the gold standard for staking pool services. Because you guys take sort of the appropriate end user cautions, making sure that you're not pushing product out too early, like waiting for the withdrawal credential repo update. Has that, from a business sense, been difficult to say, especially in a computer science driven world where we're sort of used to wanting projects done yesterday, to proactively be like, let's just wait and make sure this is done right?
Yeah, I mean, that is a really good question. It is something we do get asked a bit. And obviously with ETH2 just launching, there's a lot of FOMO involved in that. But the to valued by anyone's standards. So obviously kind of communicating that to everyone. We put out a big Medium article probably 2-3 weeks ago, basically stating why we're going to hold off. And the reasons for that. And I mean, as long as we can communicate it well, I think it's okay to do with that. But there is obviously still pressure for people saying, you get a lot of people just saying launch now. But in the token price versus the security of a long-term protocol, which is kind of what we have in mind. So obviously, people bumping up the oil price if we went live, and that's where a lot of that does come from. Whereas we're kind of focusing on 2 to 3 years down the track, making sure, when phase 2 rolls around or phase 1.5 rolls around, that this Ether can be sent back to track where it can be, RF holders can be traded in. I mean, a lot of people do kind kind of have that focus because they don't have to. I mean, we do because we're building the protocol. So that's two issues to kind of let people know our reasons for doing that, and try to do that as effectively as we can and keep people's funds safe. So, but yeah, I mean, it's really a communication thing, and for us, security is absolutely number one. I mean, yeah, we've had that as pretty much our motto from day one.
Can I follow up on what is? Do you have an emergency shutdown, or do you have a safeguard for things catching on fire?
Yeah, we've got a few switches we can flip. So probably the first one would be disabling deposits. Obviously, if anything went wrong, we want to cut that off straight away. You know, there's a couple other ones where we can upgrade certain contracts to any issues very, very quickly. When the DAO's in control, this will obviously change a little bit because the DAO will need to approve a certain contract upgrade. You know, then you have multiple parties that need to kind of approve this based on audit reports. So that would be a bit slower. So that's part of the reason why we have this 3-phase rollout where Rocket Pool will have power, then it'll be Rocket Pool and the DAO, then it'll just be the DAO, is because if something goes wrong early on, we can fix that very quickly. So that's part of the reasons why we're doing that kind of transitional rollout as well. So yeah, and answering that in short, yeah, we've got a bunch of things we can kind of flip to disable stuff.
And I'm going to hog one more. I said hog twice in this call. Sorry. We say a word in common a couple times, and it intrigues me. I like to talk about the ethos of ETHStaker. And I like to say that the ethos of ETHStaker is to be welcoming first and knowledgeable second, because you know, we want to welcome people in and make them feel comfortable and then help them learn. If we focus on knowledge, then we end up overwhelming and running people off. What is, if you were to just tell someone that didn't move?
Basically, to be a community-oriented, decentralized staking protocol. That doesn't really roll off the tongue super smooth, but I mean, if you're an outsider, that would be a lot of strange words connected together. But obviously, if you're in the Ethereum kind of staking community, that would be pretty much what we're aiming for. I mean, we don't want to be the sole gateway. We're putting a lot of effort into kind of establishing it as decentralized and trustless very early on, so that it can be community owned in a you know, a good year or two down the road. And basically that's the primary thing for us, is kind of conveying that we want to hand this over to the community at some point in the future. So yeah.
Awesome. Interesting. Thank you.
So after you guys release, is there going to be an easy way for people who may have already submitted, say, one deposit to import that key into their Rocket Pool node and continue to stake on that, but then also make further deposits to be a node operator?
Yeah, that's a good question. At this point in time, I don't think that's going to be possible, basically, because when you make a deposit through our smart node software, it updates a bunch of things in the smart contracts and so forth. So at this point in time, I'd probably say if you did start staking outside of Rocket Pool and you wanted to import that validator into Rocket Pool, at this point in time, that probably would not be possible, because obviously we need, the way Rocket Pool operates is we take a 16 Ether from the node operator and 16 Ether from the network, and that's combined together to basically form a validated deposit. So if you've already submitted 32 ETH outside of Rocket Pool, that 32 ETH is yours, and not half of it is the network. So we could probably come up with a way to import them in the future, but I'd say probably at launch, just shortly after launch, I don't think that would be possible, basically just because of the technical things involved in it, yeah.
Okay. All right. So where is the validator key? I guess that's my question. Tell me about the validator.
Okay. So which one? So the hot attestation key, or basically the withdrawals one? So
the attestation.
Okay, so that's with the node operator. So that's part of the reason why obviously we have a decentralized network, and we want redundancy throughout the network. Also have their own attestation keys, so they're operating, wherever they are in the world, they're doing their attestations from there. That's what makes it decentralized. decentralized. They might take 1 or 2 validators with them, but it won't affect the rest of the network. And obviously with ETH2, the amount of validators that go down at once. So that's kind of one of the reasons we keep that key with the node operator. The second one obviously is because the node operator has 16 Ether on the line themselves. So this basically makes them economically wanted to behave. So if you're a node operating Rocket Pool, you have 16 Ether of your own. You have 16 Ether which is given to you from the network to basically stake on the network's behalf, and you earn a commission for doing that. So you can actually earn more staking Rocket Pool than you would. Since this node operator has 16 Ether themselves on the line, that makes them economically bonded to behave, because if they misbehave, they're hurting themselves just as much as the network. So Rocket Pool is basically built on economic incentives, kind of the same way Ethereum is basically built on economic incentives. So so that's why we can keep that key with the node operator, because we know that if they do try any shenanigans, they're going to hurt themselves, probably more so than the network, but they will still impact themselves quite a bit.
Okay, so to reverse my previous question, the Rocket Pool keys out of Rocket Pool and run them in a normal, if you will, node?
That's a really good question. I don't think I've actually considered that. Again, probably not, just based on the fact that if you make a deposit through where live will be using Smart One ETH contracts on the ETH1 network, that deposit will basically its withdrawal will basically be going back to that smart contract at that time. So you basically won't be able to go outside of Rocket Pool, because that deposit will come back to a Rocket Pool smart contract, and then be half will be given to that node operator plus their rewards and commission at that time. So I wouldn't advise it just based on that. Yeah.
Okay. So to be clear, I just meant to not have to run 2 sets of nodes.
Oh, okay. All right. So
money.
Oh, right. So are you basically saying if you make 1 or 2 deposits of like, if you have 16 Ether or 32 Ether, so is that what you're saying, Laboshi?
Well, many of us are running right now solo staking nodes, but we're also interested in participating in Rocket Pool staking. So edible on the same machine, as in, can we mix our stake to what we don't want to do is run 2 sets of the same software on 2 machines, or 2 sets of software.
Okay, so that actually makes more sense. So so if we're not talking about specific validators that were created in Rocket Pool or created outside Rocket Pool, but if you're just talking about sharing resources on a node such as your ETH1 or ETH2 client, that's absolutely doable. So if you have, anyone can try this out now on Piedmont on our testnet with our smart node software. When you actually set that up, you can specify running an ETH1 or ETH2 Docker container node within Rocket Pool, and that's fine. That's all you want to do. But if you already have a pre-existing setup where you already have an ETH1 connection, ETH1 endpoint, ETH2 endpoint, you can just point our smart node stack to those endpoints. So, and that's fine. That means the only extra resources that Rocket Pool is really using is our Rocket Pool client, which uses like 10 megs of memory. It's really lightweight, and also the extra validators within Rocket Pool. So it would not add very much in the way of extra resources to your setup if you wanted to do that.
So that's great. What it sounds like is then the ETH1 client and Beacon Chain client that Rocket Pool is running is as a convenience, and that we can swap in our own tooling for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. We've really tried to make our smart node stack really flexible. And all F1 and F2 clients. If you want to, anyone can try this out right now on the Piedmont. We've got beta guides for this. You can basically install our smart node stack in a couple of clicks, and it'll set up your F1, your F2 client. Everything will get up and running really smoothly. So obviously ease of use is a primary consideration. But the second primary consideration is obviously accommodating more advanced users that already have these services running, and that's entirely doable. And we've got documentation on that if anyone wants to chase it up. Or you can just ask us in Discord and we'll point you in the right direction.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so that's going to be good, because I think a large portion of the node operator user base is going to be already running a node. So that's good to hear.
I think, yeah, we actually have a lot of staking as a service providers who are interested in running nodes in Rocket Pool, because these guys already have obviously pretty established setups, and they might already have a lot of Ether from their own clients, which they want to stake. So obviously they can get a better return on the investment if they stake that within Rocket Pool versus outside of Rocket Pool. So these guys have very elaborate setups, and part of the reason why we did build out this is to accommodate these advanced users as well as ordinary and hopefully there'll be something in it for everyone.
So basically, every staking pool is going to be Rocket Pool at the end of the day.
Well, I don't know about that, but there is, it's economically more feasible to stake within Rocket Pool. Let's just put it that way.
I'd like to ask about, and I think these might be my last questions, and because I feel like I've taken more than my fair share. So, and I wish Buddha was here, because he shared a tweet with us recently that where you had talked about the trusted signatories for the DAO, I guess. Can you talk to us a little more about that? Because I just want to put it in perspective between what is trusted and what is trustless. Okay, so basically Rocket Pool has two DAOs. So think of these as the primary DAO, which will be the community next to the protocol. The other one is the trusted node DAO. So this is the DAO which basically is our Oracle network for Rocket. Obviously, the ETH1 and ETH2 chains aren't connected, so there's no way to currently. Oh, well, there is ways of doing that. That's basically what we've implemented. But if you have, if you're say running a pool and you have a staking token that's based, its value is based on the validators within that pool, those validated balances need to be reported back to the main chain essentially. So the only way that this can be done is basically what we've created, which is a trusted node DAO. So this is a node. This is a DAO within Rocket Pool, which is made up of trusted nodes essentially. So basically, when we launch Rocket Pool, we're going to bootstrap it with about 10 trusted nodes, and these trusted nodes are just regular nodes. I mean, there's nothing really that fancy about them, except something in our smart contract basically flags them as a trusted node. And we'll obviously be doing this at the start because we can't launch a DAO without bootstrapping with a certain amount of members. So these trusted nodes will basically be reporting back validated balances, the current ETH versus RPL price ratio, smart contracts as well for collateralization and so forth. So these basic data that needs reported back validated. So the way this works with our trusted node DAO, we're going to be bootstrapping with about 10 members, and these nodes will basically are required, at least 51% of these nodes are required to agree on any data reported back to our main contracts. And they essentially will operate autonomously. If any new trusted nodes wish to join this DAO, they need to be invited by an existing trusted node. The rest of the trusted nodes then need to approve this member. They can also kick members out and basically slash some of their RPL for misbehaving. So if any of these members don't behave, they can be booted out by the rest of the members and so forth. And so they can basically set a few other settings as well. And this is basically used to guarantee that data reported back from F2 to F1 is valid and isn't abused by any single party, because it requires a quorum of these validated nodes to agree that this data is accurate. So that's essentially how the validated balances in Rocket Pool get reported back. And the RF token, anyone that holds this token, the amount of value it basically has relies on this data being reported back every 24 hours by these nodes. And we could actually have an ETHStaker node in there as part of the trusted community, because obviously this is community-owned protocol. And so, obviously bootstrapping it with a certain amount of members that are, have good standing within the community would be one of our main kind of objectives. So we will obviously be running one of these nodes is the service providers, and basically FireEyes, which is basically another Ethereum community group, and a few others as well. And hopefully if ETHStakers is interested, you guys can run one of these as well. You had us at hello. Yeah.
Seeing a few questions in the chat about, lockup and the tokenization. Do you want to just chat about the RETH token quickly?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's probably a good one. So if you're not super familiar with RETH or Rocket Pool, RETH is basically our tokenized stake. So it's if you want to stake your Ether, but you don't want to run a node, you don't have the 32 ETH or anything like that, this will allow you to basically stake by holding a token, and that's it. You don't need to lock it anywhere. You just need to hold on to it, and that's basically it. So this is a real experienced users to kind of get involved in staking. Removes a lot of the barriers to entry, and it also one of the other things which is often overlooked. It allows decentralized applications, dApps and so forth, to offer staking services, which isn't possible if you're using a centralized staking service or something that has something that uses a custodian. So the reason for this is obviously if you're a decentralized, like let's say you're a DEX, you're a decentralized exchange, you have some Ether, rather than just sitting idle in your smart contracts. You can basically build on top of Rocket Pool, have that Ether sent to Rocket Pool, you will then receive our RETH token back to that DEX, and that basically gains staking rewards over time based on the whole performance of the Rocket Pool network. Yeah, and so that's a very high level kind of description of it. But yeah, if anyone's kind of wants to experience have a token that gains value, staking rewards over time, you can do this in Piedmont right now. It's super easy to use. You only need MetaMask and it takes about 3 clicks.
Cool. Phil.eth asked a good question in the chat earlier. Do you want to ask that on mic, Phil, or do you want me to read it?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So my question is basically that as a node operator, you only need to bring up 16 ETH, but you have 32 ETH influence in the protocol. Would such protocols like Rocket Pool reduce the cost for network attacks?
Yeah, it would. I mean, that's part of the reason why we need it is because that still requires an absolute phenomenal amount of capital to, perform any kind of finality. It would still be an absolute astronomical amount of Ether. You will basically see other staking pools and potential other protocols coming out that will allow you to hold less than 16 ETH, and then essentially collateralize your node above that token is. That was kind of viewed as quite dangerous to us based on that, because if you allow less than 16 ETH, or even less than 8, or even less than 4, that kind of amount reduction increases the attack service for significantly. So we decided obviously 16 was a really good kind of level for us because it keeps node operators honest. It still allows them to earn their own rewards and commissions and so forth, and it also still keeps the attack service for pretty astronomically high. So yeah, that's another one of the reasons why we've kind of opted for 16 and not opted for less than that.
I'm kind of curious if, I call myself the Beacon Chain health consultant because my long con is the health of the Beacon Chain. And I've kind of wondered if Rocket Pool became the de facto standard of staking, if it was easier, and your UI is definitely easier to install than any of the other clients, than any of the native clients. If Rocket Pool became the standard system for staking, what would the health of the Beacon Chain look like? Would it compromise the health of the Beacon Chain, or would it steward the health of the Beacon Chain?
That's a really good question. I'd define just as long as the protocol remained decentralized, and I mean, if it did, go to for staking Ethereum 2.0, my only probably primary worry in that regard is decentralization might be constant more than we kind of want it to, because a lot of more people in say North America might be staking solely through Rocket Pool versus outside of Rocket Pool. And that obviously, as long as things are running well by that point, I think it would be absolutely fine. But if that happened very early on, I would probably be a little bit worried, because that would obviously increase, the potential for something to go wrong dramatically versus affect a lot more validators versus, people staking outside Rocket Pool. But I think generally, as long as it's running well, and it has been running well for some time, I can't see it having too big of an impact. To be decentralized and trustless. So I think the only kind of big potential factor at that point would be a malicious DAO that would acting not in favor of the network. But then again, DAOs are basically based on, because they would be, if Rocket Pool was that large by that point, RPL would obviously probably be worth quite a bit too. And this malicious DAO would then basically be sacrificing their own economic interest to kind of hurt Rocket Pool. So that would probably, we can put in certain settings to basically to mitigate sudden changes in the product. You take the inflation rate from 5% and change it to 100% within like a month or something. We can mitigate that by having a curve where it's only allowed to change X amount every month, and that will kind of give people like the inflation rate is suddenly increasing rapidly over several months, and people can kind of exit if they want to, or against this malicious DAO. So that's probably my main concern, is a malicious DAO at that point.
Your response is genuine about the recognition that it could become a problem that would need to be addressed, rather than just dismissing it. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah. We're definitely all about security.
Hey, David, I got
Go ahead. No,
yeah,
go ahead.
Hey, David, I've been with you guys since...
Danny, it's good to see you face to face. I recognize your name from...
I've been here since the ICO, and for those that didn't know, the way you guys really humble and amazing and straightforward, and definitely not a money grab. So I have and I'm pretty sure you can't answer a lot of them, but how is your guys' funding doing? Did you guys apply for any grants for GitCoin? Any update with the Consensus Venture? I think they've changed their name, but Consensus, like they have this investing portfolio arm. And kind of to go on the last question of Superfizz, and maybe it was answered, but maybe I didn't quite understand it. Is there, and it'd be a very good problem potentially in the short to medium, but is there any thought about Rocket Pool becoming too big to fail on a beacon chain health perspective? And would that have you consider how many nodes you guys would ever be running? I'll take my mic off, but thank you.
Great question. So I'll just address the first one, which is basically funding wise. We've been extremely concerned. I mean, we're probably one of the oldest projects that's still going from 2017 token sale craze, and we actually had the smallest, or one of the smallest token sales at the time. Like, it was ridiculously small compared to the other ones. And as you just mentioned too, we actually gave funds back because we went over our cap, and we actually had distributed funds back to anyone that participated. But in Wirecoin, we're still going, and we do have plenty of runway left, because we obviously want to see this through for the next few years. It's because we've been extremely conservative spending-wise, and probably one of the main factors in that is we did not list our token with any huge exchanges. Like, I can't tell you the amount of pressure that we had over 2017, 2018, for during that market craze at the time, because it was crazy. They basically, it was a sign of recognition to get listed on one of the biggest exchanges and so forth. And we had exchanges trying to gouge us massively. Like, I can't tell you the amount of times we got approached by exchanges who basically said, yeah, we'll list your token for millions. Like, it was absolutely crazy. And this was during the fever storm, 2017, early 2018. And a lot of projects aren't around today. signed up to a lot of these. They spent huge amounts of capital early on because, you know, suddenly they've got all this capital to play with. And obviously that was extremely short-sighted. A lot of those tokens aren't around anymore. Some of those exchanges aren't around anymore. So we basically opted in early on to not pay for exchange listings. And we still haven't to this day. We're basically only listed on decentralized exchanges, which fits our ethos perfectly because obviously being a decentralized protocol, being listed on decentralized exchanges is a perfect fit for us. It also allows our smart contracts to talk to decentralized smart contracts and, you know, trade our token kind of within the protocol, which is a very cool thing. So we don't need centralized exchanges for that. Anyway, funds-wise, we're doing pretty well. We've kept a very compact team. I think you'll find it's myself and Jake doing the lion's share of the work. And we have, you know, one or two other people that do contract work for us occasionally. And so, yeah, I mean, just, yeah, keeping conservative spending, keeping a small team, and just kind of driving hard over those years has kind of kept us in a pretty good space. I think you mentioned consensus as well. Consensus is still a very, very big part of us. They help us out all the time. I did a big consensus AMA to the majority of the consensus people and their extended network about 2 weeks ago. I think it was an internal one. I'm not sure if it was external. I'll find out about that though. Yeah, but that's doing really well. What was your last question? What was your last?
It was the too big to fail. Could Rocket Pool become too big to fail?
Yeah, obviously, that's a concern in any industry. Again, probably the main thing that would kind of alleviate people's fears with that is, you know, obviously Rocket Pool being a protocol rather than, you know, any kind of centralized service. So as long as it's decentralized and trustless and working properly, I think that's fine. But I mean, it obviously is a concern. Rolling out wise, I already mentioned those 3 phases where we're going to roll out in kind of a joint venture with the DAO. And we also do have a couple other things we're going to roll out is kind of restrict the amount of node operators to a certain limit as we roll out. So over a certain period, we'll kind of enable more to come in, then more to come in, then more to come in, and use this as a kind of way to regulate the launch of the platform so that, you know, everyone doesn't jump in all at once. And yeah, so security is first and foremost with us. I hope that was all your questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh no, it's good to see you face to face.
Yeah, nice meeting you, man.
Yeah, me too, man.
We got a question in the chat asking, will Rocket Pool ever move to have the validator shared?
So that's actually a really good question. So the validator key is basically, are you talking about the attestation key and all that? So yep. Yeah, I mean, people can we're actually going to be launching a grant after we launch for people to build this kind of functionality on top of Rocket Pool. So it's not something we're going to concentrate on for at launch because obviously having 16 ETH is part of the Rocket Pool protocol and obviously, you know, reduce the attack vector on Ethereum 2.0. But if anyone wants to kind of build the ability for a validator, that 16 ETH to be built from multiple parties using secret shared validators or anything like that, they can absolutely do that. And that can be part of the grants program if they come with a good proposal. We'll be actually happy to kind of fund that as long as the proposal is obviously good and, you know, secret shared validators are, you know, a realized tech by that time. So yeah, I mean, it's absolutely possible. I mean, it's a good thing about the protocol is it can be built on top of and built into very, very easily. So yeah.
Good answer, and we got to experience some Australian wildlife too there.
Yeah, so that's a crow. Actually, that's a crow. Yeah, they're very loud this time of year.
I think I am okay opening up now if you guys. So Patricio, I haven't heard from you, and you always have. But well, you're muted still, buddy.
I'm sorry, I was busy sending the POAPs because we are experiencing.
Oh, you've been
this.
working.
Yeah, and we got the POAP abuser, someone that's getting a lot, and I'm sure it's a single person. So likely next call we will require people to put their cameras on for getting it.
And so in other news, I do have 40 POAPs that I will be selling after this call. They are $1 each. Please contact me on OpenSea.
And we had more questions. People were asking to raising hands. So maybe we should open mic.
Yep, I'm okay to open mic.
Okay, I will do that. Oh, it's already done. Okay.
Well, so while no one's talking, I love this idea of switching, of not being a service but being a protocol, because a protocol to me is so much more robust than a simple service, because I imagine a service as being something run by a singular entity to do a job.
Yeah.
While I imagine a protocol to be something that anyone can interact with and anyone can sort of build on. So as a matter of fact, I'm going to do my State of the Stake recording after this, and I'm probably going to talk about the concept of Rocket Pool as a protocol, and then everyone will call me a shill.
Yeah, I mean, it is something that we kind of do need to communicate more. We've always kind of called ourselves a decentralized staking network, but network and protocol are kind of interchangeable to some degree. But yeah, I would definitely say protocol very easily, and that's been one of our design goals from the start. So,
would you say that that this is a difficult question, because I'm not, and it's probably not appropriate to ask, but I've set it up and I can't take it back now. Do you have, are there people you're looking at as competitors, or other projects that you look at as competitors to Rocket Pool, or do you feel like you're in a arena? Because when I imagine custodial pools, and then I imagine Rocket Pool, and people reach out and they're like, hey Fizz, you're always talking about Rocket Pool, why aren't you talking about the custodial pools? And for me, it's because they're not really in the same arena. Do you have a view on that?
Yeah, no, that's really good. Like we try to stay focused on what we're doing rather than kind of getting distracted by what the other ones are doing, because we kind of do view ourselves as building more of a protocol rather than any kind of custodian centralized kind of pooling service. So I would regard those guys as different from us, basically because we are basically entirely smart contract based, and we'll have built-in incentives for people behaving the protocol, and all these other different factors which none of these other guys have. So yeah, I would definitely view us as kind of being different from them. And admittedly, a lot of people do kind of get confused between Rocket Pool and other staking services which are launching now and so forth. Basically, one primary thing I always tell everyone, like if anyone launching now is using a custodian or anything that's us apart from any of these. And one thing I should kind of mention too, like if any pooling service that's launching now is actually doing that, using their own withdrawal key or custodian's withdrawal key or something, if they do just swap, they are still centralized, because all deposits up to that point belong to them or a custodian, and they need to manually bring those funds back to a contract where their token holders can cash them at a future point. So if anyone launches now, they are essentially centralized until the end, regardless if they swap to smart contracts or not, because they still have this certain amount of funds locked up behind a key, which requires or requires trust to get those funds out. So that was one of the primary factors why we wanted to wait, because if we launch beforehand, we're still centralized. I mean, because we still have X amount of funds that manually need to be moved in 1 to 2 years' time.
Very interesting perspective. Yes, thank you for sharing that. And I will try and shut my mouth if anyone else. I know that there's so many interesting perspectives on Rocket Pool, and okay. So we can begin to wrap up what I'd like to ask you is, how can people? So I know you've mentioned the 2.5 testnet. How can people get involved with Rocket Pool? If they wanted to buy your token, you mentioned they weren't listed on exchanges. How can they get that token, and what token would they be buying? Because I know that there is a multi-token system. And
it's sorry, well, RPL is our token, but we have two strict policies at Rocket Pool: is no drama and no shilling. So I'm not going to tell anyone where to buy them, but they are available on decentralized exchanges. And if you're talking about any other tokens that we have in Rocket Pool, so we have R8, which is our tokenized staking token. Yeah, you get that when you deposit Ether into the Rocket Pool front end. So it's not something you could go out and buy at this stage, but you might be able to on a third party. Another token, NETH, which is Node Operator ETH. If the Node Operator wants to exit early, they can withdraw NETH, which is a one-to-one backing of their Ether. But that requires a really long withdrawal period, like plus 3 months to actually get that to prevent certain attack vectors on the network. Again, that one probably won't be used a lot because, I mean, if you do log out as a validator, your Ether is then sitting idle for the next who knows how long, and that wouldn't be a good opportunity. But anyway, so that's our tokens. I think that was it, wasn't it, Sugus?
Yeah, I love your no drama, no shilling policy. I always, as someone who is excited, like I'm excited about Rocket Pool, I struggle because I want to talk about it so much, and like I want people to participate, and it's being excited and chilling. So I appreciate that you walk that fine line.
If anyone can go through of us causing drama, I'll give them 1 RPO. I'll give them 10 RPO because that hasn't happened from the start. At least to my knowledge, unless I had a few drinks one night and then forgot about it, I don't think that would.
So I guess we can wrap up. I want to thank you so much, not just for participating with us, but I'm not ashamed to say that I've developed a lot of respect for what you and Jake are doing, and for this concept of Rocket Pool as a protocol. I'm excited. Like I can't wait to see what happens with Rocket Pool. So thanks for coming.
I really appreciate you having us on again too. We're always happy to have a chat. I always say that the problem isn't getting me to start talking about Rocket Pool, it's getting me to stop. So you might need to wind this up, otherwise I'm just going to keep on talking.
Sure. All right. Thanks. We'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon, night, morning.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, we're out.